Okay, everybody, here we've got some celebrities, past and present, and here we have a semi-anatomical diagram of the human body. We can stop this video right now. We could be done this video if you can tell me which of these goes where on here. It seems like it's a nonsensical question, but each one of these people has a particular place here on this diagram. There is a system where we can absolutely assign them based on universal principles. And that system has to do with the form of heaven itself. And that same system places someone else here, which is you. And all of this relates to why your head exists. All right, before we can place our celebrity friends on the human body diagram, I want to talk about how immediate this stuff is for us. Because you might think, even if you're right and there is heaven is somehow arranged, what's that got to do with me? It has everything to do with you being able to be who you are. In previous shows, we've talked about how the total form of heaven is the human form, meaning you could look on heaven like a single person. So there are communities of people in heaven that perform similar functions to the organs and systems in a body, and so they are arranged in that same way in heaven, right? We've already talked about that. So there's communities in heaven that are, for example, in the head of the universal human, that they do the same thing for the human race as a whole, or for heaven, as the stuff in your head does for your body. Same thing within the chest and the arms, so on and so on. What's new in this episode is that human in heaven, the universal assemblage of the human race in the divine form, directly connects to you in particular. It right now is energizing your ability to exist. Swedenborg wrote, "The communities that are in a particular member then correspond to the like member in a human being. For example, the ones in the head in heaven, the universal giant community that's like a head for the human race, correspond to our head. They are the spiritual influence that creates us. The ones in the chest there correspond to our chest. The ones in the arms correspond to our arms, and so on for the rest." So all the angels together that are like the head in the human in heaven, their life, what they're doing, how they affect the world, that is directly impacting your head right now. I'm telling you. This is why when Swedenborg would encounter spirits, when he was having these spiritual experiences, they would always relate to, it would affect some part of his body, because it's like the table of contents for the human race. So everybody's wearing the human body around, and it turns out that is the template by which everything is organized. So it's like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. I grew up in a state in the United States. It's called Michigan. And when you want to talk to somebody else in Michigan about where you live in Michigan, you just do this and you say, "Oh, I live about here," because Michigan is shaped like a hand. You have that reference to go on. Well, where are you? Where do you live in heaven? "Oh, I'm here." What function do you perform relative to the rest of the human race? How do you contribute to the whole and make it so that divine love and wisdom can more and more make everyone happy forever? "Oh, wait, I'm kind of like this." So there is not just that reference, but directly there's an influence. And look at how extreme this influence is. We continue in existence because of this correspondence, for heaven is the only basis of our continued existence. So the way that you can even have a head, the way that there can be such a thing as a head, is because there is the spiritual cause to it, which is these angels in heaven that are acting this certain way that allows the divine human of the Lord to manifest as the head there. Your arms are powered by the arms of heaven. Your heart beats because the heart in heaven beats. This is not academic. This is, if that stuff switched off, today we would, that's my impression of us losing our spiritual energy. So knowing that we're this connected to it, it's cool to think about, well, what does that, I can get that I'm affected, but who are these people? What kind of people are in each of these places? How can I picture them? That's what we're going to do with our celebrity chart next. All right, let's go. We're going to humanize this by taking real people and aligning them to the spots in the grand human of heaven where I think they might end up. And I don't want to hear it. I know all celebrities are controversial. People, no, this person isn't that. I don't know the soul of any of these people, if they are good or not. Nobody knows that about anyone. I'm just going off my sort of vibe of what their public persona is. But this is, I want to use it as an illustration, because otherwise we'll be reading through this Swedenborg about who ends up where, and you don't really think about people. You don't really think about real people. So we're gonna do this. If you have other ideas of people, celebrities, or whoever that you think would be in these different slots in the grand human, leave them in the comments. I'd love to hear about that. All of what we're about to read is from Heaven and Hell 96. This is where Swedenborg is going through and saying what kind of person in heaven makes up what organ or system in the grand human of heaven. And then at an aggregate, what types of people are those that are connected to your head and your arm, that power humanity itself? Let's go. People who are in the head, in the universal human that is heaven, are supremely involved in everything good. In fact, they are in love, peace, innocence, wisdom, intelligence, and therefore in delight and happiness. These flow into the head and into the components of the head in us and correspond to them. First one I thought of, and this is somebody else on our staff thought of this as well. Let's go. Mr. Rogers. You are special. It seemed like he was a dude that had this long career and didn't have anything negative in it and was teaching people really good messages and stuff. So let's say there's people like that who love innocence and fostering in it, spreading peace, love, all those things, supremely involved in those. A bunch of people like that are in the head of heaven. And not only that, but somehow like their energy connects to our head's energy. So all these angels are connecting to our head. People who are in the chest of the universal human, that is heaven, are involved in the qualities of thoughtfulness and faith, and also flow into our chests and correspond to them. I was thinking, man, isn't Mother Teresa? I don't know if she's had some scandal or something, but I think she's famous for like helping a bunch of people around the world and the faith and that kind of stuff. So people who gave their life to like, I'm going to try to do that, are like the heart of the human race. This one, I didn't know if I was going to do this one or not because it's talking about private parts, but we got to get over that. We got to be able to talk about it. It says people who are in the groin of the universal human or heaven and in the organs dedicated to reproduction are in marriage love. Okay, so from what I've heard, Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson have a great marriage, which is really hard to do when you're a celebrity. Think about it, there's plenty of people that you know that just like they love each other. They love each other. Next, we're talking about the people who are in the feet in the outermost heaven, which is called natural spiritual good. People who are in the arms and hands are in the power of what is true because of what is good. Two thoughts on this. I thought about arms, Martin Luther King Jr. You think about the power of what is true because of what is good. So he's like, hey, I want to help a bunch of people that I see are suffering. And so I'm going to use the spoken word, the written word, nonviolent resistance, all this stuff I'm going to change things. That seems like an arm. And then you had Florence Nightingale, who is like called the mother of modern nursing. And she revolutionized how medical care is happening. I think of that like the hands, like the caring hands. People who are in the eyes are in understanding. maybe that means like a bunch of Einstein types. It's going to get a little crowded in the head. You think about Einstein understanding stuff about, I don't know, relativity or whatever he talked about that's helped the whole human race move forward in technology. People who are in the ears are in attentiveness. Oprah, I mean, didn't she come up because she could interview people, listen to them, understand what they were saying, know how to ask the right questions, get their stories told. People who are in the nostrils are in perception. Hey, there's no more room in the head. Scooch up, Mr. Rogers. So perception is like being able to discern what's true and what's not. I thought of Woodward and Bernstein. Those are the people who did the investigative journalism that uncovered Watergate. I'm trying to think of other examples of really big time news reporting, but that would be it. Somebody suggested Malala Yusuf is the last name. She was like, hey, this is not right. What's going on here? I want to be able to go to school. People who are in the mouth and the tongue are into conversing from discernment and perception. There's two ways, again, you could go with this. It's a party in the head. So two different ways. One is I thought of David Attenborough, because he's the guy who narrates like Planet Earth. Oh, should I try to do an impression of him? Okay, here it goes. This sloth is... I'm not going to try that. That's one way, but also you've got Linda Thomas Greenfield, who is the current UN ambassador, who you've got to be, that's like so many different kinds of people and kinds of conversations and languages. So you've got to be able to speak there. One more for the nostrils, just right on top of there. Rachel Carson, she wrote the book Silent Spring. She was one of the first people, I think, that looked around and said, hey, all the stuff that we're making and the DDT and all that, that's killing all the birds. There's no more birds anymore. So it's starting to wake us up to, hey, we got to be careful of how we are throwing around chemicals and that kind of things. People who are in the kidneys are in truth that probes and discriminates and purifies. People in the liver, pancreas, and spleen are in various aspects of purification of what is good and true, and so on. They flow into the like parts of the human being and correspond to them. You know what? Come on, Woodward, Bernstein, get out of there. I think instead of nostrils, I think like they could be there. They're like, hey, there's this stuff is going on with this politics, but I can tell something's not going right there. We're going to sift through that and get it out. So you could, if we're trying to declutter the head, Malala could be in there. Like, hey, I'm going to purify. This is not good. You cannot shoot me if I'm just trying to go to school. It's just full of real people. That's what I want you to get to see. The heaven that is so cool that Swedenborg could not stop talking about how great it is. It's not just a diagram. It's a bunch of people, all of them doing brilliant things. This is like the ultimate all-star team. You know, in basketball, if you don't watch basketball, in basketball, they do this thing where they say, we're going to have all-star teams, which means the best players from every team are going to get together and all be on one team. Well, in this, we're all on one team together, but everyone who's ever been good at anything is right in their specialty spot. And that the stronger the hands are in heaven, somehow that affects us. It affects not just our physical hands, but our ability to do what is good. The more that there are people in heaven who understand what is true, the easier it is for our minds to understand what is true. Really, we are all working in this together. So as you go about your daily life, you can appreciate people and think, oh, that's, wow, they're like, they got a good spiritual sense of smell. Like they can really tell what's going on, or they've got a great head on their shoulders. That's the connection between heaven, which is always growing, and each one of us and our ability to exist. So, I like could see how you might be thinking, blah, that's kind of weird. The whole thing about there's a ton of people in heaven and they all are like in the form of the human body, and that form relates to our form, and so this is like a huge part of existence. Kind of come out of nowhere. There's evidence of it. There's evidence of it in two really immediate observable places. In the Bible, it talks like this, but also we talk like this. the mannerisms that we have in our speech allude to the existence of this grand human, this organizing principle of humanity that's made of a bunch of little humans. This is from Heaven and Hell 95. It is because of this correspondence that the heart in the word means volition and the good of love, while the breath of the Spirit means understanding and the truth of faith. This is also why we ascribe feelings to the heart, even though they do not reside or originate there. You're so used to doing that. Oh, yeah, my heart. Your heart is not what makes you feel feelings. So first, let's look at the Bible and how the Bible uses this language of correspondences.
The Bible makes a lot of mentions of the human body and parts of the body. It talks about feet and elbows and eyes and ears and so on. And Swedenborg says that these are correspondences. Even if they're in very obvious narrative uses, they all have correspondences in them. Well, why would these be correspondential, and how could we tell? Well, why, if you picture an alien culture coming down to our planet and they try to communicate with us, they can't tell us things from their world or their technology. They would have to frame it in terms that we understand. The cars, the TV, whatever in our lives that they could use to try to explain it, and then stretch our minds from there to what they had to say. And so Swedenborg says, in effect, that the Bible is like this, giving us concrete imagery and trying to stretch our minds from there. And not everyone on the planet has a car, but everyone on the planet has a body. Everybody can understand those anatomical analogies. But how can you tell that they're correspondences? Well, a lot of them you can't really tell, but some of them are just strange. Some of what the Bible says. Have you noticed the Bible is weird every now and then? And I think that weirdness is a sign of the fact that it's trying to stretch our minds to think about even the parts of our body in a different way. Let me give you a couple of examples. Proverbs 29, verse 1. He who is often rebuked and hardens his neck will suddenly be destroyed, and that without remedy. I'm not aware of being able to particularly harden or soften my neck from one minute to the next. And even if I could, I'd be scared to do it because I said I'm going to be destroyed suddenly without a remedy. What is that? Well, Swedenborg says it's not about your physical neck. The neck is a connector between the body and the head. That means the point of connection between our earthly lives and the spiritual world that's trying to communicate with us. And if we refuse that communication, we're hardening our neck. We don't want to hear it. Now, physically hardening your neck has no effect, but spiritually hardening that connection between the spiritual and the physical, that has an impact. There's an interesting example from back in time in the King James translation of the Bible. It speaks a number of times about the Lord testing our hearts and reins, R-E-I-N-S. These are not leather straps for, guiding a horse. There's a word that's spelled the same way but means kidneys. People at that time would read that and understand it meant the Lord tests our hearts and kidneys. Even translators of the Bible felt like that was just too weird. So you won't find any English translations today that say kidneys there. They substitute the word minds, testing our minds and hearts. So in a way, they were reading the spiritual meaning inside those kidneys and substituting what it means. One final example, in Isaiah 22, there's a prophecy about Eliakim, and God says, "The key of the house of David I will lay on his shoulder, so he shall open and no one shall shut, and he shall shut and no one shall open." Well, because it's talking about extraordinary power, it seems quite clear that this is a prophecy about the coming Messiah. This is in the Old Testament, is looking forward to the time when the Lord would come into the world. What does it mean to say that the key of the house of David I will lay on his shoulder? I'm no spring chicken. I have never found occasion to put a key on my shoulder. That's not how keys work. That's not how shoulders work. I don't know how it was back in the day, but that doesn't make physical sense. But spiritually, that key to open and shut in some spiritual way, that key means a power, and the shoulder means the exercise of power. So those things have everything to do with each other spiritually. And by the way, what that opening and shutting is, Swedenborg explains too, that it's the Lord's power that he will gain while he's in this world to open hell and let us out. Nothing hell can do about it. And then close hell so that hell can't pull us back in.
Not only does the Bible speak as if this grand human composed of all the angels in heaven is a reality, we talk like that as well. We talk about, we equate personality traits with the way that the body works. Because what this is saying is that really there are people with the personality traits that we talk about in heaven that correspond to or affect the body that we have here. For example, we'll say like he has a backbone. If you stand up for something, they have a backbone, or like grow a spine, is because people in the universal human who are in the backbone are in conviction like that. We talk about people being thin-skinned when they can't really handle criticism. We talk about people being light on their feet, who can think. People have a sharp tongue. If they speak, they can really get you. People have their ears open. We see eye to eye if we understand each other. We talk about the long arm of the law when you're talking about the power of law enforcement. Those things, according to Swedenborg, didn't just happen. It's not just from being around the physical human body all the time that those figures of speech arise, because what they're doing is there's just a universal understanding that a certain character trait, which that is spiritual, a conviction or a piece of morality of some kind, that's a spiritual thing. And to link those effortlessly and naturally to certain functions in the body happens because of this reality, that there are, organized in the most amazing way in heaven, this huge assemblage of people who are in each of those virtues. That's why they're analogous to the things in the body that they're analogous to. We can feel that on a certain level, and it comes out in how you talk. Yeah, hey, you've got a good head. What I love about this is that it makes the human race additive. It makes it so that we are not competing with each other, but we're all benefiting each other. And it's a way for me to picture what God is like and how God does support and affect us. Because if I think about, if I'm saying, hey, I'm hoping for some strength, let's say I'm trying to ask God for some strength, you know that the way that happens is there are people in heaven who are strong, and strong in the sense of the best sense of the words, the power of truth to do what is good. Hundreds of thousands of those kind of people accumulated from across centuries and cultures, but all united in the fact that they want to use the truth to do what's right. God flows into those people, powers them, like drives them to be what they are. And then through them, when I'm looking for my little strength, that's where my strength comes from. It's from God through that heaven into me. And so it is with everything good that we have. Everything good comes, it's like this collective ancestral effort, everything cool that we do. So not only does this make you feel like, oh, I'm not alone, I'm connected to this thing, but also when you look out and see someone, instead of saying like, I don't like them, or are they in competition? Why are they different than me? You can say, look, they are going to go and add in some way to heaven. Maybe they're the foot, maybe they're the eye, maybe they're the ear, maybe they're different than me, but they're doing something that we need. I can't get mad at them. That's my elbow over there. We can look at the human race like it's one human being, and we'll be able to see it, because that's really how it is.